The line of need appeared an hour before the food bank even opened. The pressures facing this neighbourhood in East London are felt across the country. Britain's next Prime Minister faces a long list of challenges, but perhaps the most pressing is how to tackle the cost of living crisis so people stay fed and warm this winter. The ballot is now closed, and it's likely Liz Truss will be the one moving in here. Along with her rival Rishi Sunak, the pair have faced a summer-long job interview. But still, she had no details today on what immediate help she'd offer if she becomes Prime Minister on Tuesday.
Before you have been elected as Prime Minister, you don't have all the wherewithal to get the things done. So this is why it will take a week to sort out, the precise plans and make sure we are able to announce them.
But Truss was clear about making tax cuts a priority in order to grow the economy.
To look at everything through the lens of redistribution, I believe is wrong. Because what I'm about is about growing the economy. And growing the economy benefits everybody.
Her plan includes reversing April's rise in national insurance.
Is it fair that on this decision...
Yes, it is fair.
It is fair to give the wealthiest people more money back?
It is fair.
How confident are you feeling, Mr. Sunak?
Back to energy bills, and Rishi Sunak did provide a little more detail on how he'd help.
What I've said I would do is provide direct financial support. I announced some of that as Chancellor. I would go further as Prime Minister as the situation has deteriorated, and we would do that with direct payments using both the welfare system and the system we have to pay pensioners their winter fuel payment over the winter.
The Labour Party, along with the Liberal Democrats and the SNP, want to freeze energy bills. They suggest paying energy companies to sell gas and electricity below market rates this winter. Taking into account support announced by the government so far, data estimates from October 9 million UK households will face fuel poverty this winter. That'll grow to 12 million, or nearly half of us, in January. It means homeowners would now need to earn over £62,000 a year to avoid fuel poverty, a huge rise from the over £20,000 just 3 years ago. The organisers at the food bank say many of the people they help now are in work. Talking to people in line, they all told us the same thing. Their paychecks just aren't covering their most basic needs.
If you become a Prime Minister, please try and think of those that are working, struggling and are very worried about, the winter, about the bills, about the fuel cost, about the food prices. Try and manage that as soon as possible before people just go mad.
Do you think that could happen?
Well, it will happen. You're working and you're making money, but that is simply not enough to cover your bills. You're going to go mad.
The police are worried about just that and are drawing up plans to tackle a winter of rising crime and civil unrest. The new Prime Minister will face immediate pressure to allay those fears.
Meanwhile, today, Germany has committed to a major package of measures to tackle the cost of living crisis that will cost at least £56 billion. Chancellor Olaf Scholz promised no citizen would be left alone through the winter, helped along by one-off government payments, an energy price cap and big public transportation subsidies. He said the measures will be paid for by taxes on electricity companies and by bringing forward a planned minimum corporation tax. Well, joining me now is Rachel Erica of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, an organisation which works to promote policies which will tackle poverty in the UK. I suppose, looking at what we've just seen from Germany, does the UK need to take an urgent German lesson?
And I think it's exactly right. And I think the German package shows us a really good example of the scale of the intervention that we need to see next week when the new Prime Minister takes office.
But Liz Truss says the way to do that is good old-fashioned trickle-down economics, free up the wealthy. Yes, it looks unfair, but that gets the economy moving like nothing else, and that benefits everybody. That's the way out.
What I would say to that is that you can't have economic growth if over half the country can't pay their bills. Trickle-down economics doesn't exist in a crisis like this, where, you know, millions of households, and that's not overstating it. We know in May, 7 million low-income households in the UK, that's equivalent to the whole of the north of England, just for context, were going without essentials. You know, that was back in May before we saw these price rises now. That's huge. You can't have trickle-down economic growth, you know, if that's the scale of the crisis you're looking at.
Well, as I say, if half the people can't pay their bills. But that said, Liz Truss is adamant on this. Tax cuts are the way out. I mean, I'm not hearing people talking about tax cuts, I must say. I'm hearing people talk about bills. But there has to be something in that.
So, you know, you look at the proposal to reverse the national insurance tax rise. And what that does is for £6 out of £7 of that goes to the top half of the income distribution. That is not going to help those on the lowest incomes. So if Liz Truss is elected as the Prime Minister and if she goes forwards with those tax cuts, she has to supplement that with really targeted, big, bold policies that are going to make sure that the whole country can pay their bills this winter.
Well, that balance would have to be huge.
It will have to be huge. And, you know, to be frank, that's the price of putting in tax cuts like that at the moment, because we have to have, you know, big, bold intervention that is targeted at those who need it the most to pay their bills. It would not be right to put money into pockets right now for those who don't need, you know, the same level of support.
OK, so do you see the kind of economic mood music in the same way that she does today? And she was speaking today, and a quote, "We shouldn't be predicting Armageddon. We're in good shape. We're in pretty good shape as a country to meet this crisis," she says. Is that how you see it?
I wouldn't have called it good shape, and for a couple of reasons. So, you know, even before we had the pandemic, we saw a 50% increase in destitution in the UK. I wouldn't call that good shape. You know, as we've come through COVID, you know, we've seen massive impacts to people's finances and their ability to weather the storm. You know, we've had a decade of cuts to benefits. You know, some benefits are still frozen. It's simply not right, you know, that you think that we're on the right footing to weather this crisis as we are.
But hand on heart, surely, you must. What's going on here is you have a Tory candidate for the leadership appealing to the Tory faithful, indeed the membership. There are a certain, how should we put it, there are a certain segment of society. We're out of that now. Now you're going to see completely different things that she's talking about. And she's saying, in a sense, nothing's on or off agenda. She's already perhaps preparing us for, dare I say it, Rishi Sunak, anything goes, whatever it takes.
Yeah. So, you know, what we're seeing now, I think, is a crisis that is creeping up the income distribution. It's no longer just those on the lowest incomes who are going to be impacted by these energy bill rises. You know, that is rising up. You're looking at households who are earning more than the median income who are going to be struggling. And that means you've got to put bold measures in place right now.
Rachel, thanks very much indeed for coming in.